we're going to take you way up into the Yukon. This is part 2 of our wild Alaskan adventure. We are now on our way back to Skagway, but we decided to stop at this little area. This is one of the locals' hideouts. It's Tagish Lake. So it's on the Klondike Highway between Caracross and Skagway. It has an incredible scenic view of the mountains and, of course, the water, which is freezing, by the way. So this island was named after Lieutenant Giacomo Bove. He was an officer in the Royal Italian Navy and a famous explorer. The name was chosen as a tribute to Bove's experience in the Arctic and Antarctic regarding the weather that Swantaka believed being similar on the Tagish Lake. So the specific area is known as Windy Arm also. This area is known also as the White Pass, which is the railroad that started construction in 1898 in the wake of the Great Klondike Gold Rush. The last spike was driven in the Caracross in 1900, and the railroad became the primary route to the interior of the Yukon. The other routes like the Chillicothe and Dalton trails were abandoned because of safety. They were finally shut down in 1982, but it was partially revived in 1988 when it began operating as a tourist attraction between Skagway and Fraser. Was where it totally went over the road. The tourists got stuck, and it took them a day or two to get over back to their next port. And there's still mud all over the streets, as you can tell. That's a pretty big area, it looks like. There's some goats up on the mountain right there. Those two white things, that's goats. Yep.
Not by the hairs of my
All right. After telling us a little bit about the avalanche that hit last month, we're going to take you to Goat Lake, and our tour guide is going to tell you about that.
I like to joke around, as I said, and say it is Holland America's and Princess's water slide. Whereas it is actually a hydroelectric system. It takes water from the top of that lake way up there. It's called Goat Lake. It's also where the waterfall's coming from. And it travels down that tube. Obviously it's gravity fed. And the water makes its way down and then turns a bunch of turbines on the inside. And as it turns the turbines, it creates energy, power, kind of like windmills. Or those, I guess technically not windmills, but yeah, the massive ones that are used to create energy, create power. So it is actually used to power all of Skagway, as well as the little town of Haines. That's where they picked up, or I guess that's where the ships had met all the motor coaches to take the people that got blocked on the other side of the landslide. They drove all the way to Haines and whatnot, right? And that's also, so the power is also used to power the whole place of Haines, which is kind of cool.
And now it's back through the Port Authority and onto the Gold Rush Cemetery. Cemeteries are a fascinating way to learn about the people that lived in or passed through an area. I always try to go to a cemetery in every town that I visit, just to see the differences in the way they're buried, and just to learn a little bit about the history and things like that. There are several cemeteries in the Klondike Gold Rush area. This one here, though, that I'm taking you to is the Gold Rush Cemetery. This is the oldest cemetery in Skagway. It is also the easiest to visit. They have free shuttles that will take you back and forth from town, or you can walk it. It's about a half mile from town. There's also a trail that goes back behind the cemetery, but up a mountain, and it's a little rugged. But you'll be able to see the scenic Lower Reed Falls. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of background on the Gold Rush Cemetery. According to the historical records, the first burial at the site took place in the early spring of 1898. It did serve as the final resting place for many of the prospectors who came in search of gold but were unable to survive the harsh winters. In 1908, Pioneer Cemetery was built across town and outside of Martin Intero's burial in 1943, where the ashes of his wife were also scattered. No one else has been interred here since that time. There are a total of 174 people buried here, and although there are believed to be as many as 41 unmarked graves here and 13 known sites where the names of the deceased is not revealed by the tombstone. Many prospectors were laid to rest here, although certainly the most famous tombstone at the site belongs to controversial figure Jefferson Randolph Soapy Smith. And there are many museums in town that'll tell the story in greater detail, but the short version is that Soapy Smith was a con man. He was associated with Jesse James' gang in Colorado, who then moved up to Skagway and was instrumental in founding the town. He quickly became powerful and influential and in the city's underground. So he ran illegal card games to have the town's marshal on his payroll, the saloon that served as his base of operations. He was nicknamed the Real City Hall. After his gang conned a returning miner out of $2,700 worth of gold, $100,000 in today's money, and a crooked game of 3 card Monte, he was involved in the shootout in Juneau Wharf and died instantly from a bullet to the heart. He was buried a few yards outside the Gold Rush Cemetery, as he was not particularly beloved figure, and the townsfolk did not want his remains to be buried with the others. So most of his gang was run out shortly after his death as well. Now, due to the various thefts and decay, his final resting place is currently on its 5th headstone, which was erected in 2008. Skagway Gold Rush Cemetery is an excellent way to learn about the rich history of Southeast Alaska, and it is a must-see for anyone interested in the Klondike Gold Rush. I do have to tell you that the ground is not very even. It's very hilly. There's a lot of tree roots and big rocks and things that you can trip over. So if you're walking through here, be very careful. It's probably a good idea. Maybe have a walking stick. They do have local tour guides that can bring you up here and give you a whole background of information on everything in this cemetery. If you prefer to come on your own like I did, maybe you can hitch up with a tour that's already coming through. As I was walking around and videotaping the different headstones and the way that the cemetery is set up, I ended up behind a group tour. So I was able to listen in on what they had to say about the cemetery.
For some context, around 1898, there were a couple of people that were wandering around Canada in the Yukon Territory. So if you continue on our highway out of town, you will reach the Yukon Territory, Canada.
got blemishes on your face and your cheeks, looking pretty pale. But if you use this soap, your face is going to clear up and your cheeks will be good as yourself. I'm sure most of you guys know what a snake oil salesman is. Somebody comes into town, got a poster look, anything that's wrong with you. That's kind of how they felt about things. They weren't big companies. Focus money in the soap, so they felt pretty confident.
I hope you enjoyed part 2 of this amazing Alaska adventure all the way up into the Yukon. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos. And remember, it's up to you to make it fun and make it yours. We'll see you the next time.